LP in Asheville, North Carolina. You can also listen online at WPVMFM.org and watch on WPVM's Facebook page. I'm your host, Blaine Greenfield, and each week we focus on the Asheville theater scene as well as on positive news and information about people and organizations in the Asheville area. And toward that end, it's my pleasure to introduce my first guest, and he is Stephen Samuels. Welcome
Hello.
aboard, Stephen.
Good morning.
And Stephen, you can also wave to all your fans and friends
Hi.
on Facebook Live, and I believe we're in luck. We're on Facebook Live.
Excellent.
And I've known Stephen for a bit, and I want to congratulate you, Stephen, in that I think you tie now for the most appearances on this show. You laugh. This what your 43rd appearance?
Something like that.
Something
yes.
like that.
Yes, yes.
And Stephen's kind of a really amazing guy, and rather than me go over your background, Stephen, I'm going to put you on the spot here.
Okay.
I'm going to ask you to give the Reader's Digest version of Stephen Samuels from the time you were 5 years old. and you have 43
right.
words to do this.
Oh boy, this is not going to work. I'm from Brooklyn, and then I went to college. I went to Bennington College. I went to Brown University, and I've worked in the theater and publishing most of my life. Highlights include a decade with a crazy New York outfit called the Ridiculous Theatrical Company, where I was the manager and occasionally forced my way onto the stage. Then I spent 8 years with Theater Communications Group as the senior editor of the publishing program. So I published everyone from Tony Kushner and Stephen Sondheim to Paula Vogel and Susan Laurie Parks. And I can't begin to tell you how many amazing people I got to work with there. I spent a couple of years at Arena Stage in D.C. as the artistic associate. And then I landed in Asheville, got here in 2006, and by 2009, I had helped co-found the Magnetic Theater, which I ran for the next 8 years as the artistic director. And then there was a little falling out with the board of directors, and they went their way, and a bunch of my long-standing collaborators and I formed the Sublime Theater and Press. And we've just opened our second season with our newest show by my associate artistic director, John Crutchfield. And it is called My Crazy, My Love. And it runs 2 more weekends, Thursdays through Saturdays at the BB Theater at 7:30 p.m. So there are only 6 more performances of this astonishing domestic phantasmagoria with song and dance.
Let's talk a little bit about the show then.
This is the rare occasion on which, in fact, I think the only time you've actually seen the show before I came in to talk with you about it.
Which is really cool.
Which is pretty exciting.
Well, I like even also the description. You call it, what was it?
It's a domestic phantasmagoria.
And where'd you come up with that?
Well, that would be John, John, who speaks the English language and knows that what a phantasmagoria is, which is really a kind of succession of ever-changing scenes. It's structured a little differently than most plays. It is not as plot-driven. It is, as some, it is more character-driven, and it's a series of interlocking vignettes that reveal character and slowly but surely reveal the plot behind the entire madness. It is an exploration of a family that doesn't understand how much it loves, the members love each other, and they find out over time, much to their surprise.
What was good about the play, too, it made me look up that word.
It's a great word.
I'd never heard of it before.
Oh, okay. Well, there
but it
you
certainly
go.
describes the show.
Yeah.
And the show is, I think, to John Crutchfield's credit, and I think to you, Steve, as well, is the kind of stuff you put on, is something you don't typically see in Asheville.
Right.
It's kind of one of the things I think you try to define. You try to find, for the most part, unique or unusual works.
Sure. I mean, I've been involved in the production of original works, world premieres, for most of my professional life. And not that I don't have great interest in all kinds of classics and contemporary works, but that just happens to be my driving force as a playwright myself. As a director, I am interested in new works above and beyond all other things. Thanks to my experiences in New York and elsewhere, I've been unbelievably fortunate to be a part of the advancement of the art in one way or another, and I've always been interested in how plays can be different from plays that came before, how new aesthetic ideas can emerge, and thereby reflect different aspects of our lives. So I'm driven to that But I would never have become engaged in it in the way I am in Asheville if Asheville hadn't been Asheville when I got here, and if it weren't filled with truly remarkable people, original artists, many of whom have either come from other places or came from here and have been other places and share this very powerful desire to reflect back on our community a vision that is commensurate with its own unique identity.
But one of the things I think, which I think is really kind of cool about what you do, is that even though you have original works,
Yes.
you also brought back classics.
Yes,
I
absolutely.
think Sublime did a great production of it last year. It was the double
We
feature.
we did the Krapp's Last Tape by Samuel Beckett and the Zoo Story by Edward Albee. See, what happened was over time, my original thought when I co-founded the Magnetic was that Asheville was a very advanced, small community, very unique identity for itself, but also fairly forward-thinking in relation to the arts. What I came to understand over time was that although there was that inclination, there probably isn't as deep a knowledge of the last 50, 60 years of theatrical history, or even theatrical history before that, that many of our younger would-be actors, directors, playwrights, etc., don't have a real visceral grip on what came before. They maybe have read some of these things, but rarely have they seen the most advanced works, because let's face it, when you're doing something a little bit unusual, you're not going to attract a massive audience. You're going to attract an adventuresome audience that is looking for something new and different, and that's an audience to be cherished and developed. And I always felt that Asheville was a place where that could happen. But I also realized that because of this lack of depth, of deep understanding of what the theater has been and can be, that there was a lot of fill-in to do both for the local artists and for local audiences, in part to help them understand where some of our original works are coming from. So it became important to me to occasionally dip into classics such as Death of a Salesman, or more contemporary works like Stupid Effin' Bird, which draws on Chekhov. Not only so that we all have a better understanding of why these original works are the way they are, but also so that some of the playwrights, who are also actors, could experience great works from the inside, which is a wonderful way to learn much more about your craft as a writer. I myself, as a writer, have been tremendously affected. One of the shows that we did was Tartuffe by Molière, in collaboration with the Montfort Park Players, and that helped lead me to write a very Molière-esque play called The Merchant of Asheville. And then my work on Death of a Salesman and also Krapp's Last Tape, you will see, I hope, next July, the impact that it has on a play that I'm writing right now called This Time, which is very different from anything I've done before. And the reason is I got to have this extraordinary experience where I began to understand the way Arthur Miller constructed his plays from the inside rather than reading them. Or even when I work on a play as a director, I don't learn as much as I do as I can from acting in a play.
Well, that's one of the fun things when I go to see something at Sublime Theater. I'm going to see something I haven't seen before, for the most part.
Yeah, I would hope.
No, but it's really kind of fun. Like even Death of a
I would hope.
Salesman, I'd seen the movie, but I never saw
Right.
the show.
Right.
And here,
Well, also Henry Williamson,
Right.
the director, took a very unusual approach to it. I mean, it honored the traditions of the play, but the way the setting was designed and the depth of the characterization, I think, made it fresh in a way that even those of us who had seen the play before were very surprised by.
and what's amazing about that show was it's certainly not a short show, but
No.
it flew. You know,
Yeah, well, I always tell people that I don't really think that one's experience of the theater has anything to do with an actual clock, because, you know, you could see something that's 5 minutes long and it feels like it was your entire life, and how can I get out of this place? And you could see something that's 4 hours long and feel like not a minute has passed.
Well, I have to give you credit. You taught me something previously,
Mm.
and I was talking about the fact that I don't like typically one-person shows.
Right.
And you said, no, it's not that you don't like one-person shows. You don't like bad one-person shows, you know. But you pointed, no, but someone
I'm not
thought-
sure I put it quite that way, but,
similar to
I
it.
agree.
That
I
was
agree.
the essence of what I
Well,
got
sure.
out of it. That
It depends on what the show is.
Right. And so that, and you were so on target, because I said I don't want to see a one-person show, and then
Sure.
they can be fun. you
Right.
know.
Well, Crap's Last Tape is not anything like what most one-person shows are today. Most one-person shows right now are pretty much autobiographical, pretty thoroughly autobiographical, and they can be very powerful, they can be very moving, they can be very, very, very funny, but it's all about, pardon me, engaging pretty much directly with the personality of that one person who tends to be playing themselves. Now, Crap's Last Tape by Samuel Beckett, all right, fair enough, there are autobiographical elements in the play. Most writers work from their lives in one way or another, but he didn't create it as a play for himself to reveal himself to the audience. He constructed a character and a situation that match the best dramaturgy of any of the plays that we know. I mean, it's just an extraordinary piece of writing. And once again, I had the incredible good fortune of being directed by Henry Williamson, who helps me become much more of an actor than I could be otherwise.
And the one thing I'll always remember about that play is I'll never view eating a banana quite the same way.
Yes, there is the whole banana bit.
And-
Actually, there's a sly reference to that in the current production, My Crazy, My Love. There's a moment where I'm singing my big solo song, and there's the wonderful actress Olivia Stuller is playing one of my daughters, one of my three daughters, who is a would-be yoga instructor, and she spends a great deal of the show perched on a platform in various yoga poses, and she came up with this notion on her own. She decided that as an homage to my performance in Crap's Last Tape, that during my song she would
that's
be,
right.
in fact, eating a banana. So keep an eye out for that. Sometimes she forgets to get the banana on the way to the theater, but, you know.
Well, especially
mostly
back
it's
to
there.
the banana.
Yeah.
In that show, you had to eat two bananas,
I
right?
did. Well, I usually only ate 1.5. It's true.
Okay. But yeah, Olivia, it's funny you mentioned that too, because I asked her afterward, she's doing her yoga thing.
Right.
And before the show, she had never done yoga.
That's correct.
You know, and she's just up there the whole time.
Yeah. It's amazing.
The-
But, you know, everybody is doing something they've never done before. It's an extraordinary cast, and we've had such a good time, which I think translates for the audience. I think that we, as often happens in the theater, have become a little bit of a family as theatricians, and you know, that plays into the emotion in this crazy play, which a local critic, Michael Poindle, described as a clown car on fire on the side of the road, which seems pretty apt to me.
You know, it is, because I'm thinking about the show, and so many aspects of the show resonate to me even now. You know, like talk a little bit about music in the show.
Oh, we are so fortunate. John Crutchfield, the playwright and a set designer, envisioned, as he often does, some music in the play. He is himself a wonderful musician. But his brother-in-law is the extraordinary Holiday Childress, great singer-songwriter, although he always tells me that he thinks of himself primarily as a guitarist, and that is true. His guitar work is great, and you get to hear quite a lot of it in this particular show. So John had written a bunch of lyrics to fit the songs. He wanted each of the 7 characters basically to have their own song. And although he could have written the music himself and others of us could have contributed, he was able to talk Holiday into joining in. And so Holiday wrote or co-wrote the music. And it's 7 songs in 7 very different styles. And I think I don't know, I find it very entertaining, highly hilarious. And it's a wonderful way to make more of a kind of vaudeville out of this show. Just add a wide array of entertainment factors. So there's a little bit of singing and a little bit of dancing, along with a lot of comedy and a little heartfelt drama.
Well, even the dancing, and we'll give a shout out
Christy
to Christy.
DeVille, wonderful choreographer,
And just,
wonderful.
Right? It's kind of fun to watch, but also it's complimentary, and I already told her this. The ending the ending, there are two parts of the ending that just blew me away, but the one ending where you all come out and dance at the end is just a fun thing.
Well, it's an old tradition, especially with comedies, to have a choreographed kind of curtain call. It really comes out of the pageant tradition that Moliere grew up in. Pardon me. Where's my cough button?
I knew
So
that too.
I love to have a little dance at the end of a show, and especially this one. The very ending of this play is actually very emotional, even though most of what has preceded is pretty broad, crazy comedy. And so it just felt right to return to a certain kind of comedic fun with a choreographed curtain call.
And I have to tell people, make sure you stay for that. You know,
Oh, it's so much fun.
it's just worth watching. But even mention, we don't want to give it away too much. But just before that, there's a
Yes.
serious ending, and boy, the special effects. You know, it's
Yeah,
just incredible how that was done.
The play calls for and even refers within the script to a coup de théâtre, and what that means is a sort of lightning strike in the theater itself. There is a don't want to give too much away, as you say, but there is something physically spectacular that happens in the theater that just so far is drawing cheers from the audience. I mean, we sort of knew how to go about this effect and how it might work and the impact it might have, but we're actually very surprised by how powerful an effect it's having and the reaction that people have to
And
it.
it really is. I mean, almost my jaw dropped when I saw this.
Sure.
You know, this.
Yeah,
ending.
it is jaw dropping, but it also plays into something that I've always felt very strongly about from my days at the Ridiculous Theatrical Company in New York, which was also a very small theater and working with a very limited budget. And Charles Ludlam, the genius in charge of that outfit, was dedicated to all kinds of theatrical traditions, but he loved the scenic traditions, and he did not care for the kind of spectacle that even then was available in Las Vegas, on Broadway. Nothing wrong with the various high-tech approaches and spending millions of dollars to get your spectacular effects. But there's something very different that happens, I think, for a theater audience in a small venue, again, with a scrappy little company with very, very little money, pulling off some kind of amazing effect, usually handmade, not rooted in high technology in any way, shape, or form. And when you can create a spectacle with nothing, from nothing, it is, I think, even more effective for an audience. I think because it's totally unexpected. When you go to see a big Broadway musical these days, you know the kinds of effects you're going to get. They're still going to delight you, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But you expect them, and you measure them against each other. Oh, did this show do that as well as this show did, and so on and so forth. But when you come to a little theater doing original work, and everything is handmade, the smallest effects seem even more amazing.
And that was my reaction exactly when I saw this. I
Yeah.
had no expectation
I know.
of it.
It's wonderful.
It just surprised me.
Yeah, it's
We
great.
should also give a shout out to your stage manager or your
Yeah,
assistant
my
director,
assistant
too,
director, Rachel McCrane, yes.
Rich McCrane. Boy, did she
Fabulous
have to work on that show too.
Yes,
you know?
everybody. Yeah. I mean, the Rachel, John, and I figured out how to do the climactic event together, and then worked very hard. Rachel, I did the sound. Rachel and I did the lights. John did the set. So it's a very intimate family affair,
Let's talk
and every member of the team is critically important,
And let's
including
talk a
all
little
of the
bit about
actors.
one of the things you do, Steve, with Sublime Theater and Press is you get everybody involved. In other words, I was looking at the playbill.
Oh, yes.
I saw that everybody had about 17 different jobs.
More or less, yeah. And also, we did it with a small production team. maybe we should have had an extra hand available to do nothing else but help. But instead, all of the actors pitched in major ways, very creative, little things like Olivia thinking well, I'll just do a little joke here with a banana. Everyone, Julian Voris, Lydia Stoller, a new young actor for us, Emily Moriniti, Art Moore, who also does the fabulous graphics for us, Kathy O'Connor, who plays my wife. Did I get everybody? I think I did. Yeah, it's just every single member of the team has offered up more than I could have asked for. I've always said that as a director, I prefer not to give people everything because I could do that. I always say I could, block the show, I could explain your character to you, I could sort of show you how to read your lines, and it'd be fine. It'd be a good show. I'm pretty good at this stuff. It would be okay. But it's so much more interesting to me, and I think so much more effective for the work overall when the actors are bringing more than I could imagine to the parts. In fact, I prefer to think of myself directorially as a kind of editor. I love it when the actors bring this and this and this and this, and I just help choose which way to go or shape it a little bit, but I love it when the impulses come from the actors and I just help to enhance them a little bit. So I've always loved this notion. This play in particular, My Crazy, My Love, has been the most rewarding for me as a director in that regard because so much has come from the actors themselves. It's really wonderful.
It's probably more fun for the actors as well.
Oh, of course.
And, in terms of ownership or them talking about
That's
the
right.
play as well.
That's right.
Because it's their play also, not just
Exactly.
your play.
Yeah, it is very much. I mean, yes, it's true. John wrote the play with this part of Archie Bub Finkelstein with me in mind.
Well, by the way, was that
he's
a little bit of typecasting?
there's a little bit of typecasting.
Tell the story. He wrote it with you in mind?
Yeah, he did. I mean, he wrote it with a bunch of people in mind. I'm I'm the only one who made it all the way through because he started on this play, I don't know, 5-6 years ago, maybe longer. This one took a long time to brew and get right. But he did write Bub Finkelstein for me, drawing a little bit on my background as a Brooklyn Jew boy, as we like to say. A lot of the details aren't right. I'm not a lawyer. I never was. I
Well, in the
actually
play,
don't do any homesteading, and I've never. Well, maybe in the early '70s I did a little homesteading, but that was a long time ago, and John didn't even know about that.
Right. And in the play, you weren't much of a lawyer for a long
No,
time.
no. And he has me as the world's worst fiddle player, and that would be true, except that I don't play the fiddle. So.
But he played it very. I was impressed with him. Yeah, he played it very well.
Well, I play it very well for someone who plays it very badly. I do a great job of being a terrible fiddle player. Yes, I agree.
That was fun. What was it like directing yourself in the play?
Well, I've done this. I've directed myself so many times. It doesn't really have much of an impact on me anymore. I started directing myself when I was 16. I guess because I didn't know you aren't supposed to. I have long since developed some kind of capacity to pretty much know what's going on around me. I suppose it's a little bit unusual, but it's just through practice I've developed a certain sense, and it's interesting. After a certain point, we started making little videos, if only for historical purposes, of the shows. And I've always been astonished to discover that it all kind of looks the way I thought it did. So I don't know why it works that way for me, but it does. It is not always my favorite thing to do. I get a kick out of it, but I really do enjoy being directed by others so very much. And in this particular instance, I did bring on an assistant director for a variety of reasons. So Rachel helped me a great deal and helped the other actors as well. So I get a little help. get a lot of help. But it's funny, for the dress rehearsal, John came in and used my phone and took some 800 photographs of the show. So I really was able to stay up all night and look at what we had made. And I will say that it's not that I was surprised exactly, because it all did kind of work the way I thought it did. It's just that everyone looks so much better than I even imagined. And again, the spectacular effect towards the end of the play is just, it really is very effective.
Well, a compliment to Steve Samuels in that anything I've seen you directed specifically, I'll say to myself afterward, boy, you have the right cast for it. You know, like this show,
Right.
I can see it in front of me. Art Moore, for example.
Sure,
you know,
sure.
everyone is like perfectly cast.
Yeah.
You know, I couldn't see anybody, Kathy O'Connor, I couldn't see anybody else
Right.
doing it better
Right.
than the people you have in it.
Thank you. Thank you. That's a compliment to me, but it's also, and John, because we cast the show together, really. But of course, it's a tremendous compliment to the actors who deserve it. I mean, some of them you might have thought fit their roles pretty well to begin with. Others, not so much. Kathy O'Connor is, as best I can tell, absolutely nothing like Julia Finkelstein.
Right.
Absolutely nothing like her. So, and Olivia Stoller is another good example. Did I not mention Lydia Congdon? I hope I
No,
mentioned
you didn't mention her. Thank
Lydia
you. Yeah.
Congdon. She is so wonderful and so funny, so sharp in this show. All of these people, like Olivia, when she first read the script and knew that John and I were thinking of her for this particular role of Kristen Finkelstein, she said, I could not, I don't understand this part. Nothing could be further from me. I don't even know how you thought about me for this part. And then she inhabited it, as you say, so fully that you can't imagine anyone else playing it better. You can imagine others playing it, I'm sure, but not better. Yeah. And that's the key. There's an old saying in the theater that directing is 90% casting. And yeah, if you cast the play properly, if you're lucky enough to find the people with the proper talents and skills who happen to be available and happen to be interested, yeah, that's going to help your directing a whole lot.
As I said, like on this one, you had some people in mind for it.
Yeah.
Did you also have auditions for it as well?
Not on this one.
Because I'm saying,
Actually, I mean, we read the play a few times with the people we had in mind, just to be sure that it was working. I mean, when we invited Kathy O'Connor, Kathy was actually not the first person we thought of. I also work a great deal with Jane Hallstrom. We have a habit of playing husband and wife. And Jane was not available for this particular production, and then I had worked with Kathy before, and we thought of her for the part. So she did come in to read for it, but I wouldn't call it an audition exactly. It's not like we did an open casting call and just saw anyone. Almost all of these people are people we know and have worked with, and so we have some sense of how we all work together and what their capabilities are. But we'd worked with Lydia and Olivia on John's play last year, TRNZ. Art Moore was in my show, The Improbables, with me, and was also in our production of The Zoo Story last year. Julian Voris, we've been working with as an actor and a playwright for years and years and years. In fact, we'll be doing his new show in April. John will be directing You're Going to Hell, Deirdre Jean. So we knew most of these people. The surprise on this show is the young Emily Morniti, who is a UNCA student who came to us because John teaches German at UNCA, and Emily was taking the class, and so was Dakota Mann, another actor, stage manager, all-around theater guy who's worked with us before. And they got to talking, and Emily approached John, or John approached Emily, and we read her in the play, and she was perfect for it, just perfect.
Steve, if anybody wants to catch the show, they still have opportunity to do
Yeah,
so.
we've got 6 more performances the next 2 weekends, Thursdays through Saturdays at 7:30 p.m. It's at the BB, downtown Asheville, 20 Commerce Street, and the best way to get tickets is to go to mycrazy.brownpapertickets.com, mycrazy.brownpapertickets.com, and of course you can buy tickets at the door if we're not sold out.
And I encourage folks to see it. They'll have a good time.
I surely hope so. They've been having a good time so far.
And thanks, Steve, for being my guest this first half hour.
Always a pleasure.
And as you work your way out, I'd like to mention that support for this show in WPVM is written by the Grail Movie House. You can get out, Steve.
Okay, bye.
Asheville's alternative cinema. The Grail Movie House is an independently, locally owned 3-screen cinema located in downtown Asheville. For current features, visit the Grail website at grailmoviehouse.com or the Grail's social media pages. As my other guests work their way in, I'd like to mention 2 other upcoming shows in the Asheville area, and they are The God of Hell, and that's the Sam Shepard play. It will run through this coming weekend at 5 Below, the 15th to the 17th. Very interesting show. I think you'll enjoy it, as is the current show at the Magnetic Theater in the Nick of Time Mountain Political Action Committee. That runs through the 23rd of November. And again, you can find information either show at that show for the Magnetic Theater website. God of Hell you can find out at Asheville Community Theater website. Good stuff, and I encourage people to see it. On the subject of good stuff, it's also my pleasure now to introduce my second guest to the show this week. And they are 2 guys that I've known for a bit, and they are Zachary Eden and Jane Mitchell. You can wave to your fans at Facebook Live. Okay, and I believe we're on Facebook Live. And I'd like to, first of all, thank you for coming to be my guest.
No problem.
Thank
And
you for having us.
Zachary is, let me put your mic on, Jay, that would help. I think that'll be it.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you. And
Thank you for having us.
using your best radio voice from your college days, right?
Yes, I did a little bit of radio, I guess, hosting when I was at the University of West Georgia. So
And
we
you
were on
made-
the Morning Howl on the internet radio station there.
And then you made a comeback, of course, in Hands on a Hard Body. You were a DJ.
I did. I played Frank Nugent, the DJ for KYKX, Kicks 105.7
Okay.
in Longview, Texas.
And Zachary Eden, now, am I pronouncing the last name
Yes,
correctly?
Eden.
Eden. He's a director of a current play at Hendersonville Community Theater. And the name is Escanaba in Da Moonlight.
Yeah, Escanaba in the Moonlight.
And what's that play all about?
Well, it's about these 2 brothers and a father that go annually to a cabin during hunting season, and the older brother has never shot a buck, and it's the story of how he shoots a buck for the first time.
Okay, and it's a comedy?
It's a comedy written by Jeff Daniels.
Okay. And this comedy then is now, it's opening up, I think, this week
On Friday, yes.
at
Hendersonville Community
It's
Theater.
going to run till when?
It's going to run till Sunday the 24th. It's going to be Friday, Saturdays at 7:30, and Sunday at 2.
Now, you're directing the show, is that correct?
Correct.
So, in terms of some of the stuff you've done, I've also seen you as an actor. Do you have a preference, acting or directing?
Well, I like them both. I would prefer directing just because I feel like I could watch and give feedback and I have a good vision of the show. I feel like I'm a better director than actor, but it really just all depends on the part and the show and so forth.
Now, you've been doing this for a while, is that correct?
Correct.
Because the question I always ask, and I'll see if you remember it, do you remember the very first show you were ever in?
Yes, I was like 5 or 6, and I did the show Pierre at a local community college weekend acting camp or something like
You
that.
remember it?
Yeah, I remember it.
Because I have an idea, Zach, I want you to share with when you go back to Hendersonville Community Theater. I think we should have a fundraiser, okay?
Okay.
And everybody could play their very first role, you know?
Uh-huh.
So when you played it, they probably didn't take a videotape of it, or do you have a videotape somewhere of it?
Maybe. I remember it, but
But wouldn't that be
I don't know
cool
if we have
if you had
video.
to create your first role everybody comes as an adult playing their first role as a 5-year-old.
I think that'd be great.
Okay, something that
Yeah.
you could do, and I'm gonna put you on the same spot, Jay. That you were telling me you've come into acting later, but you did some acting as a kid.
So we did the local Catholic high school did a Shakespeare festival where they went to all the other area Catholic schools, and they put on a 15 to 30 minute rendition of a Shakespeare play, and there were several Romeo and Juliets, and there was a couple Julius Caesars, and then our school did Taming of the Shrew, and it was a very condensed and chopped down a rendition of it. And in that show, I played the servant Curtis, and I think I said that in the whole thing of it, I had 3 lines, a look, and a slap. And I was the one that got slapped instead of delivering the slap.
And
So
you remember your 3 lines? You don't have to do it now, but
no.
you'll have to come
Let me put it this way: it wasn't an iambic pentameter, so
you'll have to come to Hendersonville Community Theater when we do the fundraiser and see Jay's acting debut. Talk a little bit about the show then you're currently in, and let's talk a little bit about the cast and the whole casting process.
Okay.
Did you have a lot of people come out for it?
We had about 10, 15 people.
Okay, good number. So is that tough for you to choose cast?
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes it is, because you have to you use your acting skills, but then you have to like measure them up on how like they would work with each other, and like aging the ages and the looks, and it's more than just the skills.
Because on this show, you were pretty lucky. You had age-appropriate actors for the most part.
Correct.
Is that correct? Who'd you cast?
Well, we have Jay as Remnar. We have Cody Perot as Ruben. We have Brent Schulster as Ranger Tom. Doug Sparks as Albert. Jack McConnell as Jimmer, and Jan Robbins as Wolf Moon Dance.
Okay. And I just love the names, and you were telling me that this is all about people in this area, or it could be in this area.
it takes place in the Upper Peninsula. So the UP is what it's kind of commonly known as, and that's the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. And the UP is kind of a vast forest area that is some of the best hunting, fishing, and camping you can experience in the country. And so our purpose in this show is to go up to our deer camp that our great grandfather created, and have sleep there the night before, and then wake up first light and see if we can find the big buck to bring home and make dinner.
But the cool thing is, I guess even though it's in Michigan, it could be in Asheville as well, or it could be in this area.
Well, it's all written. Jeff Daniels wrote this with the upper Midwest dialect phonetically. So when you read it, it reads as the dialect would require. So the best way to kind of explain it is, if you've ever seen the movie Fargo, it's all, oh yeah, don't you know, you betcha, hey, there, oh, I got a thing I need to do, I'm going to go to the two-holer, and that, even though it's not the regional dialect that we have here with all y'all and, you bet, or don't, there's a very different dialect that we have here. The principles and the ideas and the emotions, everything that goes into this are all pretty much the same, I think. So if you were to, I always kind of say, redneck as a cultural thing, entity, is not exclusive to the Southeast or the South. It's actually, there are rednecks everywhere. I think Jeff Foxworthy, who is the kind of person that coined it and made it a thing, basically said that redneck is a complete lack of sophistication. And so our characters in this are basically Michigander rednecks, if for lack of a better
But it almost sounds
appropriate
like
term.
it almost sounds like though they could be Asheville rednecks as well. If change the accent.
Change the accent, yes, they could very well be at home here in Hendersonville, in Weaverville, or any you name any town around Asheville, and these guys would fit in just fine here. They would have to learn the local lingos, but they would get a couple looks of you ain't from around here.
Was that tough, Zach, to get everybody to have the right language, or was that part of your auditioning process?
It wasn't part of the audition process. Actually, they came in and did pretty well with the dialect. We've had a dialect coach come in 2 times, and she is actually from northern Michigan, not in the Upper Peninsula, but she vacationed there a lot. So
Who was that?
Molly Carlin Folk.
Okay, and that helped in the process.
She came in a couple weeks ago or a week ago even, and just seen what they've done and listened to what they've done so far and gave some pointers, and they picked it up pretty easily.
It's a lot of like words that have th. It's kind of a very lazy way of talking. So th instead of like thing, it's ting, or the is duh. The porcelain bus, the this over there, yeah, and not there, it's there. It's a lot of being very lazy about how you pronounce certain things, and it's also kind of keeping it pretty low and being very not excited, but at the same time it's a very excitable show, so there's a lot of action that's going on in it.
Did that make it tougher to learn the dialogue?
I don't think so, because there's a lot of very funny parts of it that are written in with that dialect in mind. There's one character completely. There's a whole part in it where one character's Chevy breaks down, and he goes into a very a long monologue about what happened to his Chevy, and basically after the monologue is done, we have my brother, played by Cody, Ruben, who basically interprets and explains to everyone what exactly the Jimmer Meganomy from Menominee, that's the character whose Chevy breaks down. He explains exactly what the Jimmer has just said, but it's very funny to go through that whole process.
Zachary, how did you guys choose this particular play to do for Hendersonville? Were you involved in that process?
I was not.
Yeah.
I was not. I was just asked to direct it, and I read it, and I liked it, so I took them up on the offer.
And so when they chose the play, they had a group of people at Hendersonville chose the play. What was your first reaction when you read it?
The first thing I read it, I had to read it twice because of the dialect and how it's written. I just didn't get it the first time. So I got parts of it, but then I'd have to go back and read. I had to read a sentence like 3 times to understand what it was saying. So, but I did see I saw that it could have a lot of potential to be funny. It's a great story. It just, again, when you read it for the first time, it's confusing. I would say I directed a show last year, which was more confusing than this. So, it's a fun read, not an easy read, but a fun read, and it's been fun to direct it and see it come into live action.
Now, the question I ask a lot of directors who also act is if you had a preference, because I could see you acting in this play too. It seems like you could have had one of the characters.
He almost had to.
Really? Yeah. Well, just like a previous guest you may have heard directed and acted in the show. Do you have a preference to acting or directing?
I prefer directing.
Yeah, and why is that?
Because I like to give feedback and I have a good vision of shows, and I feel like my strength is in directing and not acting. I act, but I feel like I'm better director than actor, and I'm still learning on how to direct. This is only my second show, and it's a work in process.
How does one learn to become a director? Just doing it, or just
I've had some mentors and just knowing I've done stage managing and acting, so knowing all aspects of it really help. But really, I think it's you learn while you do it.
because I've read that too, that one of the best preparations to be a director is they say everybody should be a stage manager. Because I guess you're a stage manager, because I've seen you work as a stage manager.
I've been in stage managing at several theaters in the area.
Because, boy, they work hard, don't they?
Yes.
Stage manager.
Ooh.
Yes.
Who's your stage manager for this?
Sarah Hassinger, and she is amazing.
Okay.
She is amazing. So as a stage manager, you have to be there every rehearsal, take notes of blocking, which sometimes isn't easy when you're going fast. You have to feed lines if a cast member calls for line when we're not using the script or off book, and they say line, you have to be right along with it. She's going to be up in the booth directing the lights and the sound and feeding instructions to backstage. So she has a lot of responsibility, and I couldn't ask for a better one.
Because also, weren't you a stage manager recently? Jonathan's show, did you stage manage that, or you were just helping with that too?
Which show?
He did a recent show. Jonathan Forrester was the director of.
I wasn't involved.
but-
It was here. I stage managed A Gentleman's Guide to Love and Murder at Parkway Playhouse.
Okay.
And I've stage managed quite a few shows at Hendersonville Community Theater.
Because I'll ask you the same question, Jay. Would you ever want to be a director of a play, for example?
That's a great question, and to be very frank, I don't know if I would. I don't think I have the knowledge or experience right now. I've pretty much only been either in acting or doing backstage work, building sets. I did that when in college for a couple shows, and I did a run crew for one or two. I don't see myself as getting into the directing side of it, not because I wouldn't want to. It's just I don't think I have the skill sets to be most effective at it. But I really get a kick out of acting and being a part of a show and being a part of a cast. And really, this has been a blessing to be a part of Escanaba. It's just been a really, really fun show, really funny. The cast has been wonderful to work with. One of the things that's been really fun about it is answering the questions about who our characters are when we're not in camp. One of the things and Zach asked us to do this and to explore this in the early process of acting is, find your character's walk. What does your character do? How do they move in this space? And what's their essence? Who are they and what do they do? And I remember when we were in rehearsal one time, we took a 5 or 10 minute break and just I walked up to the guy back when Gary was playing Ruben. I went up to him and I just said, "Hey, what do you think Ruben does outside of camp? Like, what's his 9 to 5?" And Gary lit up and goes, "Oh, I'm so glad you asked that. I think my character is a gas station attendant. Like, he works in a convenience store, and because Ruben's he's a fish out of water in his own family because he's 35 and he hasn't killed a buck. He hasn't shot a buck himself." And we had this establishment of he's in the group, but he's not in the group. He's not 100% into it, and part of his job is he's going to be working as a gas station attendant, or a convenience store cashier, and because he handles money, he feels like he's better than all the other characters in this cabin, but yet still be close to them. And I asked, well, I'm thinking Remnar, who I play, I think he's like I was tossing around the idea of either a mechanic or a high school janitor, because he doesn't have a job that's really commands respect in the sense that, people rely on me for big decisions. I turn a wrench or I mop a floor. But when I come to deer camp, I have a big part. I have my rituals and my routines, and every year I come home and with the big buck because of all these different things that I do. But when I go back home, I turn a wrench or I mop a floor, and it's not to diminish any of those jobs because we definitely love those people that do those jobs. But it's this idea that I have this bigger thing that I get to do when I go with my family to deer camp.
Great concept, Zach, to ask people to see how they would see, like I said, when they're not doing the on the show. Do their visions ever differ than yours? Do you have a vision certainly, and then if one of your actors says something different, does that sometimes happen?
Yeah, yeah, and you just have to. My method is I like to see what they have, what they think, and because they're in the show, they're doing the show, and it's not all me. I like to see their thoughts and their visions of the show, and then I tweak them as needed. But I like to work as a team. I'm not gonna sit there and tell you need to do this, you need to do that, you need to do this. I have said that before. I have said you need to do this instead of that. And I've gotten into we've gotten into, I wouldn't say arguments, but definitely everybody in the show is pretty strong-headed.
Creative differences.
There you go, creative differences. And as a director, I just have to, which sometimes I struggle on, is standing strong on what I want. But over time, you get there.
But you raised a kind of a good point in terms of working with your cast.
Mm-hmm.
Is I guess the more they can bring to it, the more they feel ownership of the show as well. That it's not
Right.
just your vision;
Right.
it can be their kind of a shared vision.
Mhm.
I guess it helps in the overall production.
Yeah, it does. Because I'm not up there thinking like, well, this doesn't feel natural when I sit here and do this. I want them to feel as natural as possible, and that makes it look better instead of them. Like if Jay were to go over to the chair and sit down, but he's like, in reality, I wouldn't do this. Then I want him to feel comfortable, but I also want it to look realistic.
One of the fun things for me is going to be seeing the show is I've never seen it elsewhere. And I'll even ask you, has there been a movie version of this?
Yes,
Now,
there
the
has. I haven't watched it.
I always
though.
ask that question that a lot of actors say they don't want to see it because you don't want to see what was done before.
I haven't. There is a stage production video and a movie, and I haven't seen either because I want to take my own vision and put it out there. I think some of the cast members have seen it.
I actually saw the movie before I auditioned. The movie's been out for many years now. I had a family friend of ours that was from Wisconsin, and they had mentioned this movie, and I was like, "You keep talking about this. You keep referencing this movie. Let's just see it. Get this over with because you keep talking about this movie, and it's hilarious. It really, really is funny. And I'm a big Jeff Daniels fan from back in the day when he played Lieutenant Colonel Chamberlain in Gettysburg, and when he played Dumb and Dumber. That's some of my favorite Jeff Daniels. But I really loved what he did when he played Will McAvoy in the newsroom. And there's just so much that he's done, and I watched this and I was like, okay, this is a really interesting thing that he did, and he wrote this, and
Was he in the movie?
he was in the movie. Yes, he played Reuben, and it's really funny, and I'm one of the types that I don't necessarily get that, I don't understand the idea of seeing something and thinking that it's going to influence the way you would portray it. I'd never felt that way. But there's definitely, I kind of look at it as, listening to, I'm not musically inclined very much. I can't play guitar or play any instrument, but I look at it as, when someone makes a great song and they make a great cover of that song, the bones are still there of what makes the original what as good as it is, but a really, really good cover of that makes it takes what is already there that's great and then puts your spin on it. And I think that's what I try to do when I see a character portrayed previously.
Zach, will you see the movie after the show?
Yeah, I want to see it.
Okay, because I think that'd be fun. To
Yeah,
kind of
I'm going to see it, and then I'll be like, oh, I should have done this, I should have done that. But right now it's turning out to be excellent. Last night I watched it, and I was cracking up. And I know the lines, and I know what's coming, but every time, it's at different parts every night, I'll crack up. Sometimes the same part, but...
We sang the dialogue, so even if you're not from Minnesota, you'll be able to Michigan. You'll be
Yeah.
able to understand the dialogue.
I think so, yeah.
I think it's pretty easy to pick up, don't you know? Don't you think so?
It's easy
I
to-
mean, if you can understand me right now, then I think you would understand what I'm saying on the stage, eh?
Yeah, it's easier to listen to than read.
Oh yeah, reading's really hard to do it because there's a lot of apostrophes and things that are taken out of it, and you don't know what you're supposed to actually say and what you're actually not supposed to say.
Zach, when we made our mistake, we should have had Jay do the whole interview in the dialogue.
Yeah, right?
See if
We'll
he did it.
do a little the actor studio in here, yeah.
Talk about Zach. If people want to see the show, then it's opening up this weekend. When's the run?
The run is, what's this week? The 15th, right? Yeah. November 15th, 16th, 17th, and the following weekend, Friday, Saturday at 7:30, Sunday at 2 p.m.
And they're going to be able to get information about the show at website is Best Bet.
www.hendersonvilletheater.org, and theater is spelled T-H-E-A-R-T. No, theater with an R-E.
R-E.
There
I
we
contend the correct way,
Yeah.
not the incorrect way. They can also go to you have a really good Facebook page. You can find out
Facebook.
information about the show as well.
Yep.
there.
Facebook, just look up Hendersonville Community Theater and press the like button.
One of the things I give you guys credit for, though, being in community theater, is that this is not something you do as a full-time thing. I assume you have to do other things as well?
Yes.
Do you do other things? What
Yes,
else?
I work at Buncombe County Schools as a school social worker. That's my day job.
Okay, and so you've been doing that for a while
This is my 5th year. And before that, I was with Vashel City Schools for about 3.
as a social worker?
I was a teacher assistant there.
Okay. So this is certainly a change to being community theater.
Yeah, it's fun. It's also an outlet for some people, and it's good to just get a way to express yourself.
And the same question, Jay, too. You've been in now 3 shows I've seen you in since you've been in this area. This is not your full-time gig, is that correct?
No, I'm actually I'm in outside sales. So I worked for Toshiba Business Solutions for a while, and I just recently took a new position at the Hendersonville Times News as a advertisement executive there. So I'm selling advertisement, paid advertisement for the Hendersonville Times News. And yeah, it's kind of, some people fish, some people work on cars. When I have free time, or I decide to use my free time to perform on stage, and it's something my wife told me that I should get into, because I talk about theater and I talk about, and it all kind of started when I went and saw Footloose at ACT, and my wife loves that movie, so I got that for a nice little date night for us. And at the end of the show, she kind of said, I think you should give it a try and go out for something. That night, I saw the Hands on a Hard Body, and I actually saw a cast video of it. Wanted to get the part of the Marine because I am a former Marine myself, and was not cast in that. But it's one of those things that it's been a joy and a pleasure to do.
Well, I'd like to thank you, Jay Mitchell, for being our guest in the second half hour, along with Zach Eden. Encourage folks to get out to Hendersonville Community Theater and they're in for a treat. Also like to thank Steve Samuels, my guest the first half hour, Amy Prisnach, my producer, and to Zuzu Wells, who provided the music you heard at the beginning of the show and now be hearing at the end. Hope to see you next Wednesday.
Rep. Nunez and Schiff will not pontificate, but merely ask questions. There's a